Hello and welcome everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in. I am Lucas Tietzen and this is Blues News Media. Now, today we are going to discuss something that I think is incredibly important because to this day in history, September 27th, back in 1964, the United States government once again lied to the American people. I know, what a shock. But how did they lie? That is because they released the Warren Report, that well-known famous lie where they said that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone, shot the leader of the free world, and had a miracle bullet that was able to bounce off a bunch of things, plunge into the president's skull a couple of times, or once, whatever it is. They lied to us anyway. And that was basically the story. And we were told to go back to bed, America. The government's in control. Good old LBJ is in power now, and he is going to take care of everything. But as it turns out, when you lie to somebody, especially the entire public, sometimes they don't like to take it at your word, especially if you have a long track record. And that is what we're going to be discussing today. Not the many aspects of the JFK assassination that we could easily start going over, but I don't want to have this to be like a 5-hour long video. We're just going to go over a couple of documents that I think is important to remember, especially in the age of 2020, where a lot of people have decided to just blindly trust their government. We need to remember that it is important to question. It's normal to question, and it is unnatural to just accept the words of known liars. But what exactly am I talking about? Warren Commission comes out decades ago. We're going to talk about the conspiracy theories, not just like particular ones of what happened, but the actual conspiracy theories and their role in American society. And that leads us to this hopefully well-known document here. Now, this document, if I am not mistaken, was from, is this the FBI or CIA? I don't think it's reported in here. But this document was released, and it is beautifully titled Countering Criticism of the Warren Report. This came out back in, I believe it was 1967, so a few years after the Warren Report was released. And this weird side effect happened, after they released it. People didn't accept the official story. They did not like what they were told by the government. And who would have thought? I mean, the whole thing was steeped in suspicion and weird happenstance. So a lot of people ended up not trusting the government. And so they had to do some damage control, naturally. Oh, I'm sorry, it is the CIA. I thought so. CIA Historical Review Program. Anyway, so they had to do some damage control. And they came out with this really well-known document, at least in the realms of the conspiracy world. And that is this one here. And the general idea of this one, we're not going to go over the whole thing again. I want to keep you all too long. When it comes to this document, many people, I don't know if they get excited or misspeak. They say that the CIA invented the term conspiracy theories. They invented the term, conspiracy theorist. That's not entirely true, at least when I read this document. I would say that in this document, they weaponize and begin to demonize the term conspiracy theories, conspiracy theorists, people that question the government, for the purposes of discrediting anybody that questioned the official narrative that was brought out by the Warren Report. It was just drawing too much attention, and it was scaring the CIA. It was scaring the government. And I wonder why. It's important to think about this. And we're going to read a little bit of this, and it's going to be linked up in the show notes. I encourage everybody to read this. Send it to your friends, your family, share it on social media, print it out, download it to your hard drive, and all this stuff. If we do actually live in a free society, why is it that the intelligence agency, or one of the intelligence agencies of the American government, they found it necessary to draft a game plan to discredit people that question what the government said? Inherently, right there, that does not seem like a free world to me. That seems like you live in an empire that started to protect itself. That this was a free world, there would have been a great open investigation. Instead, it was shrouded in mystery. It was very suspicious. So keep that in mind as we go over this. But we're just going to read a couple of parts here. And this document opens with our concern, the concern of the CIA. And it says, from the day of President Kennedy's assassination on, there has been speculation about the responsibility for his murder. Although this was stemmed for a time by the Warren Commission report, which appeared at the end of September of 1964, and it was released on this day, various writers have now had time to scan the Commission's published report and documents for new pretexts for questioning, and there has been a new wave of books, articles criticizing the Commission's findings. Those pesky people questioning us. In most cases, the critics have speculated as to the existence of some kind of conspiracy, and often they have implied that the Commission itself was involved. Who would have thought? Presumably, as a result of the increasing challenge to the Warren Commission's report, a public opinion poll recently indicated that 46% of the American public did not think that Oswald acted alone, while more than half of those polled thought that the Commission had left some questions unresolved. Doubtless, polls abroad would show similar or possibly more adverse results. Yeah, and I'm sure that those numbers were way, way higher. They always have to make it seem like they're in control. People trust the government. It wouldn't be in their interest to be like, yeah, 75% of the public doesn't believe the lie that we told them. That's pretty scary. No, they want to be like, those others, the minority, those are the crazy ones. And you want to be the good little boy and girl and get the pat on the head from the government. But it continues with, this trend of opinions is a matter of concern to the United States government, including our organization, the CIA. The members of the Warren Commission were naturally chosen for their integrity, experience, and prominence. They represented both major parties, and they and their staff were deliberately drawn from all sections of the country, just because of their standing of the commissioners' efforts to impugn their rectitude and wisdom tend to cast doubt on the whole leadership of American society. Moreover, there seems to be an increasing tendency to hint that President Johnson himself, as the one person who might be said to have benefited, was in some way responsible for the assassination. He did benefit. He became president, didn't he? Innuendo of such seriousness affects not only the individual concerned, but also the whole reputation of the American government. Our organization itself is directly involved. Among other facts, we contributed information to the investigation. Conspiracy theories have frequently thrown suspicion on our organization. For example, by falsely alleging that Lee Harvey Oswald worked for us. He did. The aim of this dispatch is to provide material for countering and discrediting the claims of the conspiracy theorist, so as to inhibit the circulation of such claims in other countries. Background information is supplied in a classified section and in a number of unclassified attachments. But it says it right there. The aim of this dispatch, of the purpose of this paper in a free world, is to provide material for countering and discrediting the claims of the conspiracy theorists, who, as they just said, oftentimes challenged the CIA themselves. They had a direct interest of not only weaponizing this term conspiracy theorists, it was necessary for them. They needed to do it. The public was not trusting them. But we're going to go over just a few of these actions here that they recommended. Like, we do not recommend that discussion of the assassination question be initiated where it has not already taken place. Or, in other words, if nobody's talking about it, keep your mouth shut. You don't want to show them the rabbit hole and then say, don't go down there, you know? If it's out of your mind, you won't think about it. But where discussion is active, however, addresses are requested. Like, to discuss the publicity program with liaison and friendly elite contacts, especially politicians and editors, pointing out that the Warren Commission made as thorough an investigation as humanly possible, that the charges of the critics are without serious foundation, and that further speculative discussion only plays into the hands of the opposition. Point out also that parts of the conspiracy talk appear to be deliberately generated by communist propagandists. And this is like at the height of the Cold War, you know? So if anybody that literally questioned the government, oh, well, you're a commie, and I can't take you seriously. They also, though, urge them to use their influence to discourage unfounded and irresponsible speculation. So they're telling these editors, these politicians, you need to discourage this unfounded and irresponsible speculation, basically saying, tell people not to question. Do not think. Do not say, hey, that doesn't add up. That only goes against the government. And this is like the big one here. And this is when we read this one, it's important to remember that at this time also, the CIA was also engaged in Operation Mockingbird. For those of you who don't know what Operation Mockingbird is, that was when the CIA basically sent out agents to all of the major news organizations, especially ones that were pro-American, pro-business, and anti-Soviet. And they implanted stories at these news organizations to basically control narratives, partly to drum up support for the Cold War, but also to control what the people of America were exposed to, what information, what opinions. And with that, you were able to morph the public mind. So keeping that in mind, the CIA recommended this: to employ propaganda assets to answer and refute the attacks of the critics. Book reviews and feature articles are particularly appropriate for this purpose. The unclassified attachment to this guidance should provide useful background material for passage to assets. Our play should point out, as applicable, that the critics are wedded to theories adopted before the evidence was in. Basically saying, well, we know all this now, so your theory is now, it's outdated, it's unfounded, go back to the drawing board, you got nothing. Politically interested, like when they were saying, call them communists, just discredits them right away. Saying they're financially interested, you're just trying to make a quick buck off your book, questioning the death of a president. Hasty and inaccurate in their research, that one's used a lot today. You go to your parents, your friends, people on the street, talk to people on the internet, and you question things and you fall into the label of conspiracy theorist. People immediately think, oh, you just watched a video, oh, you just read a couple of articles, and now you think you're an expert as you question these things, but you're not to be trusted. That's immediately what people go to. You're labeled conspiracy theorist, you're placed in a little corner in their mind saying they're discredited right away. It's very dangerous how this all has played out, unfortunately. Lastly here, it also says, infatuated with their own theories. So I'm sure it kind of plays into the financial interest thing, you get so full of yourself, you're like, oh no, I found the answer. And I've dealt with people in that capacity also, but they made this game plan of people are questioning the government. They're questioning what happened to JFK. They're not buying the crap that we're forcing down their throat. We need to come up with a game plan to discredit those people so nobody will take them seriously. They won't catch on. It's very dangerous. So this goes on for a couple more pages, but I don't want to, again, keep you too long. But this is very important. It's going to be linked up. I encourage you to read it in its entirety, and then please share it as well. But I do want to make one more point, especially in this paper, this report here. This really is useful. The government trying to manipulate the person's mind and saying, don't trust these crazy wackadoodles, right? But all the while, I mean, conspiracy theories, they're very mainstream now. There's tons of YouTube channels and videos. There's lots of movies, lots of books. It's become this weird cult phenomena to, question the government and everything. But the government is still they didn't stop here. They didn't stop back in 1967 of just trying to discredit people. And this is going to be a growing trend as we get farther and farther into this dystopian hellhole that is being dug for us. Because as the future goes on and agendas get pushed, people that question the government are going to become the new enemies of the state. It's that fabled thing that who was that, George Orwell said, an empire of lies, telling the truth is a revolutionary act, and you better believe the empire is not just going to let you sit there forever making YouTube videos or talking to your friends and family about these things. No, you're going to be an enemy. And how does the American empire deal with enemies? Pretty direct, pretty forward. And we see them laying the groundwork for that right now with this article paper from the FBI. Let's get to the front page here. So this is from the FBI, and it came out in May 30th, 2019. So really recent. You all remember 2019, where everything was kind of messed up, but at least there was no pandemic. Well, conspiracy theories were still abound. They've never stopped. If anything, they're gaining momentum. I would argue that there's a lot of people waking up right now, and that's great news. But the more people that wake up, the more of a threat they are to the state. And the state will do anything and everything in its capacity to maintain power, up to and including labeling its own citizens as threats, and then dealing with those threats as need be. And we see that in this document right here, which is entitled Anti-Government, Identity-Based, and Fringe Political Conspiracy Theories Very Likely Motivate Some Domestic Extremists to Commit Criminal, Sometimes Violent Activity. This is a very broad term that they're throwing out there. Just these conspiracy theorists can be domestic extremists. They could be violent, and they need to be dealt with. Now, this is just 2019, but this paper has been put out. It sets a precedent. Conspiracy theorists could be domestic extremists. And what's a domestic extremist? It's a terrorist. It's an enemy of the state. And those enemies of the state, they need to be dealt with. But now you might be thinking, I dabble in this stuff, Lucas, but it's not like I'm an extremist, and I probably don't fall into a lot of these, categories that the FBI deems, too extreme. Well, let's go ahead and see some examples of what the FBI says are potential, domestic extremists and may cause violence. And you can see this in their examples. If we go down to page 8, and again, this will be linked up in the show notes. I encourage you to read it, print it out, anything and everything that you can do to share this information, maybe even this podcast. You can like, share, subscribe, get the word out. This is the goal. It's spreading information. And you need to realize, if you don't, you are a target then. The longer we don't do anything, the more and more they'll have this power to come after us with this scary precedent that they have already set. But I would encourage you to go on page 8, Appendix B. It is entitled Prominent Anti-Government Identity-Based and Fringe Political Conspiracy Theories. So we're going to go ahead and just look over some of these conspiracy theories that they deem as scary, dangerous, cause for alarm, perhaps need more tracking on, What we see here, just as an opener, the conspiracy theories referenced in this intelligence bulletin have been categorized as anti-government, identity-based, or fringe political because they assert secretive, malevolent acts either by an allegedly hostile and tyrannical federal government, which is what we have, by racial, religious, or social minority groups, or by political opponents. And the very first one, I'm sure a lot of people, they might fall under with this anti-government. The first one is the NWO. Anybody worth their salt knows that means the New World Order, which we have seen politicians talk about openly before. I mean, they can talk about it, but you can't. You see that weird hypocrisy going on there? But they define it as a group of international elites controls government, industry, and media organizations, instigates major wars, carries out secret staged events, and manipulates economies with the goal of establishing global rule. Which again is all true. That's all going on right now. There is a small network of people that own the majority of society, and they are actively, they have instigated major wars. They have engineered it so that countries go to war. They carry out secret staged events. They manipulate economies with the purpose of establishing global rule. And this is especially important because if you have been following this channel at all, when we were going over the paper, I believe it was Clever Together, the one that has lockstep in it, that one directly states that under the guise of climate change and global warming and all that stuff, the nation state is going to dissolve. It's going to basically take a back seat and be powerless, while at the same time implementing regional and global power structures where it's a top-down authoritarian system where the people at the top, speak their edict and the plebs they have to serve under it. It's not conspiracy theory. It's literally talked about. That's why it's really frustrating when they're like, oh no, these conspiracy theorists, they just have wild imaginations. And it's just like, no, we don't. We're just watching what you're doing. We're reading what you're putting out. It's not a matter of speculation. You're openly stating it. And then there's another one, the UN. Everybody loves the UN. The UN is being used by an evil global cabal to erode American sovereignty, strip away individual liberties, and bring foreign troops to American soil in order to replace democracy with global tyranny, which we just talked about, which is basically happening. The United Nations will be the model, but will ultimately probably take a backseat as they burn the old order and implement the new order. And false flags. The official story surrounding a given terrorist attack or mass shooting is a lie. The event was staged or conducted by the government to justify encroachments on civil liberties. Now, not all false flags that people claim are false flags are true, but I mean, this month was September 11th. That was a false flag. You were lied to about that openly and for years. But guess what? Just like with the Warren Commission, if you question it, you are the problem. Just accept it. Then you have identity-based, where you have Zionist-occupied government. Jewish agents secretly control governments of Western states and are conspiring to achieve world domination. Now, I wouldn't say it's obviously not the Jewish people, but if you look at AIPAC, the Israeli lobby group, I mean, that has a lot of influence over the American government. They use a lot of control to influence politicians to carry out, especially geopolitical agendas, and at the same time giving them huge amounts of money. Like, that's really not that much of a conspiracy either. It's a problem when people say that it's the Jewish people. That's really toxic, and that's the problem. It's always when people say, I don't know, what do they say, down with Israel, whatever it might be. Like, it's not the Israeli people's problem. They're not the problem. It's kind of like America. The American people aren't really the problem. It's the American government. These structures of control are what are the issue. And people that fall into the, oh, Jews are bad kind of thing, they're just big old dum-dums. We also have Islamburg, the small Muslim community near Hancock, New York, known as Islamburg, is a terrorist training camp. Its residents, who pose as peaceful Muslims, are in fact Islamic radicals operating as a terrorist sleeper cell. Now, personally, I've never heard that one. I mean, there's a lot of racism in the world, so I am sure this is very real. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen anything about it. Certainly, I'm sure there are sleeper cells, but again, if you're gonna blame people for being, who they are, whether especially based on faith, you really need to wake up and, bring that focus back and see where the real problem lies. It's not the people, it's power. Then we have fringe political, like the famous Pizzagate. I was never a big believer in Pizzagate. I guess I haven't seen maybe enough information. It seemed like a bunch of mumbo jumbo. If you think that there's something I should see, please send it my way. But otherwise, But for those of you who don't know, it's high-ranking Democratic officials are or were involved in a child sex trafficking ring centered at the Comet Ping Pong Pizza restaurant in Washington, D.C. And now, I'm not saying like child sex trafficking isn't, a major problem. I'm just saying like specifically this Pizzagate thing, I don't know enough about it to really make a comment on it. But we know child sex trafficking is a huge, massive issue, and people in government, high levels of government, are actively involved in it. I mean, it's documentable. It is not a matter of conspiracy theory. Like, that's just a fact. And that bleeds right into this last one here of QAnon. Now, this weird cult, I'm sorry if you're a QAnon believer. Again, I don't really believe in superheroes, magic men that are going to swoop down and save the day. I think only you and I are the ones capable of saving ourselves. That's what makes this one so different. If anything, I think this is like a CIA psychological operation to take the people that are the most suspicious of government and turn them into, crazy enough, worshipers of the state, worshipers of a single person like Donald Trump. But we'll go ahead and read it. It says, an anonymous government official known as Q posts classified information online to reveal a covert effort led by President Trump to dismantle a conspiracy involving deep state actors and global elites allegedly engaged in international child sex trafficking ring. And we know that's a thing. Now that's become mainstream, you can look at Jeffrey Epstein. He very much was running a child sex trafficking ring, and a lot of that got swept under the rug. Like, a lot of that just disappeared. It's still going on. But to think that Donald Trump, with the help of some, anonymous man in the White House, is taking on the deep state or the shadow government and putting it to these pedophiles, and they're gonna lock them all up. It's fantasy land. You're in Wonderland when you believe that. I haven't seen any proof. I haven't seen any evidence, and we really need to be careful of falling into that mindset, because that just means you will wait and wait until big old Papa Trump saves the day for you, and next thing you know, everything's worse because things are on a really downward path right now. But I just thought that would be a great thing to bring to everybody's attention on this day, the anniversary of the publishing of the Warren Commission report. where many, many Americans questioned the government, so much so that the CIA had to put out a piece of how to counter those questions and how to demonize them, how to make them look ridiculous. And over decades and decades, it is now just ingrained into the public mind that people who question, we label conspiracy theorists. People we label conspiracy theorists, we don't pay them any mind. They're just crazy, cuckoos, distrustful. And at the same time now, the government, in a defensive, soon to be offensive, I'm sure, position, is saying people that question the government are domestic extremists, and they are the problem. And that is something we need to look out for and be wary of, and to show people. The government is literally labeling people that question authority, that question their rule. They are threats, domestic extremists, terrorists, enemies of the state. And it does not take much, as they like to use, speculation. It doesn't take a great creative mind to see where this might lead in the future. So we need to be incredibly careful. But that will do it for today. As always, thank you very much for listening. I truly appreciate it. If you like this, please make sure to like, share, subscribe, anything and everything that you can do to help support this show and get this word out. We truly appreciate here. Maybe you don't want to share this video. That's all right. Go in the show notes, print out these documents, put them on a hard drive, put them on paper. Yeah, print them out, get them into the hands, in front of eyes of people that might be open to this information, and show them the government doesn't like it when you question them. The government views you as the threat. That is what we need to do right here, right now, in this day and age. That is the way we turn this world around. At least that's what I believe. Also, please be sure to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, minds.com. We're pretty active there. You can always find me on YouTube, BitChute, and Library. If you have another social media platform that you think I should be using, please reach out and let me know. I am open to anything. If you want to tell me how I'm doing, maybe I got something wrong, maybe there's a topic that you think that I should go over that the people need to see, you can always also email us at bluesnewsmedia@protonmail.com. So many ways to be engaged, be active. As always, thank you very much for listening. I am Lucas Tietzen of Blues News Media. And if you take one thing away from all of this, hopefully it's this: ignorance isn't bliss.